It has become apparent to the African American community that a subliminal biased message has been communicated from the Trump White House into state houses, city political houses, and into the broken criminal justice arena. Months after being convicted for second-degree murder, former Chicago police officer Jason Van Dyke has been sentenced to 6 years and 9 months in prison and 2 years of mandatory supervised release for the 2014 murder of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald. Van Dyke shot McDonald 16 times with 9 in the back on the night of October 20th, 2014. Van Dyke claimed that he fired after McDonald failed to comply with demands to drop a knife he was holding, and he made a threatening move toward police. Judge Dominica Stevenson acquitted former officer Joseph Walsh, Detective David Marsh, and Officer Thomas Gaffney on charges of conspiracy, official misconduct, and obstruction of justice. The truth has now surfaced, but only after a string of lawsuits and a judge's order to release dashcam footage of the shooting. City officials released videos showing that McDonald appeared to be moving away from the police when he was shot, contradicting Van Dyke's account. It is now without doubt that public officials knew of the well-hidden facts, the facts concealed from the taxpayers. With concentration on the new sentencing guidelines, an abundance of attention was focused on the apparent fact that an African-American youth had been shot 16 times, and that the assigned judge did not understand the justifiable rage of the community. Blacks have been sentenced to more than 7 years of offenses that were not fatal. African Americans have always been fuel for the criminal justice system, but recently from the corridors of darkness come yet another maneuver called select sentencing for a white offender. Chicago, located by the beautiful Lake Michigan, has now become an historically breeding ground for its miscarriage of justice in the Cook County criminal courts. When individuals are sent to prison for an abundance of years for marijuana and a small gram of cocaine or crack, what message are we relating to those that take the lives of black youth from among us? The police in question will be free in a matter of days. Is this justice, or is it criminally just us?
Hello, I'm Chinta Strausberg, host of the Strausberg Report, and today I truly have a very special guest. His name is Howard Saffold, former director of the Security for Mayor Harold Washington. Welcome to the Strausberg Report.
Pleasure to be here.
And it is an honor to be here. You did such a magnificent job protecting our mayor many years ago.
It was a team of us, and I'm honored to have been a part of it.
Absolutely. But now things have changed since Mayor Washington died in 1987. You have a lot of police abuse cases, like Jason Van Dyke, a 40-year-old Chicago police officer who was not even assigned to be on the Cicero. He rolled up and said that, I guess we got to take out this fella. We got to shoot him. 17-year-old Laquan McDonald walking away from the police, and he takes his gun out, empties his gun 16 times in 15 seconds. This is a child. And I'm told that smoke came out of the body of this child. In the trial, they kept saying, Mr. McDonald, Mr. McDonald. He was a child. Laquan McDonald, dead. How do you feel about that? You're a former police officer, how many years were you a police officer?
I can't talk about the police without talking about from whence I come. An organization called the Afro-American Patrolmen's League.
Oh, yes.
That challenged misconduct back in 1968. So nothing about this current case is new to us in terms of patterns and practices. Some of the questions that I think we fail to ask as a community, when we get an opportunity to get into the real depths of what do the police do, how long have they been doing it, how long have we been victims, did we learn anything, do we know anything more about fighting than we did 50 years ago? And I say that the Laquan McDonald case and the Officer Van Dyke, you said something just now in your opening statement. Why was he over there? Have we asked how he got over there? How did the kid get over there? What was there that we don't know about? It may have been an assignment to murder that kid, for all we know. I have to take you back, Chinta, because back in the mid-'70s, I don't know if you ever heard of Commander George Sims. He was a commander on the west side of Chicago. And on his watch, we discovered there was a Ku Klux Klan cell operating. Yes, ma'am. Yeah,
And there was a KKK?
He was one of the strongest black police commanders that has ever hit the Chicago Police Department. His history is in our archive at the Chicago History Museum. They've recently digitized the collection of the Afro-American Patrolmen's League. I just think we would be honored to know that people want to know the history, because you can't fight going forward if you don't know the history of how the fight originated. So to say that I was a young rookie police officer when I met every one of those Ku Klux Klan members, I was working in a district on the north side of Chicago called Shakespeare. There was no Afro-American Patrolmen's League. And when I found out much later that these guys were getting dumped into the black community because they had beat up a white gang member on the north side, but his daddy was a politically connected individual. Mm-hmm. So when they investigated and found out that these guys were doing what they were doing to the white gangs on the north side, guess where they sent them?
To the black community.
All right. So there's a pattern here.
How do you know they were KKK members?
Well, if you go back and look at the Jet magazine was the one that did the in-depth story about it. And all you would have to Google is the Ku Klux Klan in the Chicago Police Department in the 70s. Please look that up. See, because sometimes, again, repeating
well, tell us about it.
Well, I'm not a historian. I'm trying to make people see. We want people to help us know something, and we don't want to take the time to try to learn it. Mm-hmm. I just told you the collection is at the Chicago History Museum. It's 200 and something boxes of why did the black police, who wanted that job just like the white officers did, why did we have to create a separate police organization because of the way our community was being treated by the police? Mm-hmm. That's not something to just skate over. That's something that we should cherish, learn about, and then learn, did we learn any lessons from that? Harold Washington inherited us. We came to him as an organization. All right. I just took charge of his security because that was the assignment they asked me to take. Mm-hmm. I was just a lowly little president of the Afro-American Patrolmen's League, minding my own business, trying to take care of the business in terms of how our people were being treated by the police. So I think the history is very important, Chinta. Mm-hmm. For anybody that George Sims was one of the few commanders of police that was also a National Guard commissioned officer. And when Dr. King got assassinated in 1968, when we started this organization as a result of that, George Sims was one of the few people that, I don't know if people realize that they can shut this city down in 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. We talk about threatening them with riots and what, they've had riot training for 50 years now. So they've just become more sophisticated. So now let me take over your questions, but you pushed the right button on me.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Well, that's good. So I don't remember so many police abuse cases when Mayor Washington was in office.
Here's what Mayor Washington was able to do in that short period of time that we had. There was an organization that was working in conjunction with the Afro-American Patrolmen, and there were several really. But Citizens Alert, a lady by the name of Mary Powers.
Oh, yes.
Mary Powers asked Mayor Washington, was there anything that he could do about the police complaint process being in the middle of the police headquarters? You had to go to Lebanon State to file a complaint. And the police would look at you as if you make it to your car, you lucky. That's how intimidating they were. Yeah. And they're still that way.
History.
They're still that way. So what Mayor Washington did was moved the OPS, as they called it at that time, the Office of Professional Standards, and it's had several names since then. But the patterns don't change. The patterns don't change. But he moved it out of the headquarters of the police station around the corner on Wabash. And people felt a little less intimidated to go in there and file complaints. We as an organization were still telling people that once you file a complaint, you know you have the Internal Affairs Division of the Police Department, you got the police board, and this newly created thing called the Office of Professional Standards. But many of our violations are federal violations. We should be notifying the U.S. Attorney's Office, Civil Rights Division, every time something like this happens. Even in the Laquan McDonald case, Chinta, in my opinion. There should have been a federal charge along with what we were doing on the state level. And because that young baby's life was snuffed out as a child, and if that's not a violation of his right to live, what is?
But I understand that the FBI has launched an investigation.
Well,
and a grand jury was convened, and they're.
No, sister, let me just say again. I don't doubt anything except the federal government needs to be held accountable as well.
Right. I think they're looking into it, and there could
Well,
be federal charges.
Look,
But now, how do you feel about Jason Van Dyke doing this?
this man was sent to kill somebody. That's my opinion. And they still have not explained clearly how did he get to where he was on the west side, supposedly, over to the south side. And how did Van Dyke know that? I know the police department's radio system, I don't try to be an expert, but we on bands from district to district. And sometimes you have to track those radio calls. And I would still be very interested in just knowing, why was he even over there? Why was he there and why was the youngster over there? Why did the two of them? And so the subtlety of us selling for just somebody and then putting ourselves at the mercy of an individual judge's decision is repetitious for us. It's repetitious for us.
Now, how do you feel about the judge giving him 6.7 years?
Well, I don't want to second guess the judge. I want to tell you that they tell you and they told me that the system works. If it works, let's make it work for us. And that's a strategy. That's not a conversation on the radio.
But
television.
how could that work when the young man who was 18 years old who killed Hadia Pendleton, a 15-year-old girl, got 84 years? I mean, that's crazy.
If I could use a parable, I have a bench in my house for moaning, and I have a bench in my house for action. Yeah. So we've been crying about what they do to us so long that we forget that there's sometimes it requires a collective effort that says let's do more than one thing at a time. After we complain, then what? So my question to you, I reverse the question. Now that we've had such a horrible decision handed down, and are we supposed to live with that? Or do we begin to talk about how do we fix and prevent that from happening to us again, to anybody's family?
That's my question to you.
Well,
as a
I'm
former
not on
police
television
officer.
trying to tell people strategies. I'm trying to tell you that we need to begin to at least put the quality of life and the value of life back on our own families. These people have indicated to us. And remember, the police are not disconnected from the court system. The court system is not disconnected from correction system. Those are three systems. We have to systematically address systems. We can't just talk about it.
I don't think the sentence was fair because the jury indicted him on all the counts. And then this judge, I just, and then the three detectives were let off by a judge who had an association with one of their attorneys. It's just something is not right about this.
I'm going to get off the moaning bench for a second and try to address that, okay? It's kind of important that we have a recollection of what they call power. They showed you how powerful they are.
Yes.
With all the demonstrating, with all the people in the courtroom, with the whole world watching an execution. They had nerve enough to do that.
Yes.
That's what we call abusive power.
Yes.
And if we, as a community, decide, and I'm solution-oriented, if we decide that the black family is valuable again, I have a friend I've been following for he's been locked up in state penitentiary since 51 years. His name is Joseph Hurst. He has a Muslim name of Madyun. He wrote me a letter recently, and I shared it with Minister Farrakhan and Jeremiah Wright, because we got to talk about the role of the church, the role of the press, the role of the community in terms of just stopping people from deciding what value is on our lives. So it's emotional for me to talk about the police, because I know some decent police, but I accuse the average police officer, especially the ones that are belonging to these unions, of being cowards for not speaking out. We know what code of silence means. It means we all take up banner and protect drug dealers, police officers, drug dealer murderers, drug dealer abusive, mentally ill police that need to be treated. Why aren't they speaking out about that? Just keep putting the onus on black police officers. Well, black police, the Afro-American Patrolmen's was probably as bold as you're going to ever see us again. It just doesn't exist. But the church is a power that gave us strength back in those days. So we're just saying all we need to do is, after we take inventory on how egregious that decision was, how wrong it was, and how those individuals who sit and lie got caught lying, wrote reports that were convictable if in fact they swore on the oath. Why aren't they being tried for perjury right now? Okay, so my point is, when we start talking about what is the power of our family, we need to talk about what is our situation. And right now, they don't think our children's lives are worth defending, prosecuting in behalf of, and the rest of that. Do we accept that as or do we start getting off camera? I mean, camera is powerful. Communication is powerful. Word is powerful.
Yes.
But we had other powers as well. And I'm saying right now, the energy of our young people is confused because we're not protecting them. But not just on the street with the police. Look what we're doing with our kids in the educational system. When was the last time we actually got angry about our child being marched out of a principal's office straight to a juvenile institution? It's unheard of, but it's happening. So it's kind of hard to talk to me about just one case. But that case was the most egregious recent case that we could ever look at. The judge that made the decision took it upon herself or himself, whoever, they both gender specifically occupy that court system power. They're not fearful of what we do anymore. They predict our demonstrations. They predict how we're going to respond. And I just believe that a God that I serve says, if you can't protect your children, why should I protect you? So I make some recommendations sometimes, can I?
Yes, I would love to hear them.
Well, first of all, I think we need to just pull back for a second and realize what has happened in the last 50 years since Harold Washington inherited us after our first 10 years of existence. We had already been in existence when he came. We had decided that the children were sacred. The old people were sacred. The women were sacred to the family. That's community law. We need to go back to that. We need to go back and kind of consider how many of us have benefited to get a job as a judge, become a lawyer, a job as a policeman, become a superintendent, a job as a corrections officer, become the director of the Illinois Department of Corrections. We have been put in powerful places.
Yes.
And we don't seem to care about our children anymore. So my suggestion is, first of all, let's get back to family matters. And when I use family matters, I mean family matters in terms of issues that we are confronted with, but also family matters from the standpoint of a foundation makes a family strong.
How do you do that?
Well, you do it one family at a time, Chinta. See, we keep trying to jump over the work. And I don't mean you. Obviously, I don't mean you. Sometimes the church has a pew full of pain. Everybody in there hurt. Every time I go to court, you look on one side, the perpetrator, the other side, the victim. But both family, same family, many times. So when we start talking about is there something that we need to be doing, I think the first thing we need to do is redefine who we are. And not to white folks, not to the world, to each other. Should you be precious to me whether I know you or not? Yeah, you're a woman. And it's complicated and actually magnified because you're a black woman. So I should be concerned about that whether I'm in the drug business or in the police business. But when they come together, we need to, four things rather. It's an acronym called CERN. Corruption, excessive force, racism, and nepotism. That's a cancer that's eating at America. Not just the police department, but specifically. Well, I'm just telling you what, you asked me suggestions. We need to reevaluate who we are, and then we need to reevaluate what we're up against, and who are we trying to save first. And I think we can save each other family at a time. In my family, for example.
Do you think the church should take the lead
The
on
church,
that?
the church should be the safe meeting place. The safe meeting place. When you walk across that threshold, no matter what your denomination is, I told you, I talked to Minister Farrakhan and I talked to Jeremiah Wright because those are two men of God that I respect. I don't just follow them because of their titles. I watch their track records as well. And they're producing people that can hold church accountable. They're saying, okay, the pew is whispering, why don't we have a loud conversation about it? Some churches are beginning to do that. Our organization, the Positive Anti-Crime Trust, is saying we want to be a resource to the church. I'll be a resource to the police department if they want to talk honestly. But if they keep, I'm sorry.
Tell me about this, your organization. What do they do?
The Positive Anti-Crime Trust is nothing but the educational arm of the Afro-American Patrolmen's League. That's our history. We just didn't try to make all black police do what Renault Robinson was doing, or even Pat Hill, and she was the last on the watch as a president. But we do know the principles that brought us together in the very beginning. And what we were doing was talking about the responsibility of a police officer. How do we, as a community, hold a police department accountable, one officer at a time?
Yes.
One at a time. So when we talk about what the role of the church is, which is so critical, it has the authority to speak truth.
Yes.
Period. Not just the power. But if you know you're getting compromised or you belong to a church where your minister has been compromised,
Yes. Yes.
you need to at least reconsider whether or not you're in the right place,
Absolutely.
family by family. So I think we'll talk, and we will be talking, Afro-American Patrolmen's League evolved into the Positive Anti-Crime Trust. The people around us are seasoned veterans, if you will. I ain't got a dime. I can't pay no staff. I can't even do what you do. I like to just do podcasts and stuff, so we may get around to that. Reverend Bailey and Probation Challenge is helping. They're rising to the occasion. They're saying, okay, how many ways do we have to communicate? Reverend Helen Sinclair and Dr. Burroughs and I and Reverend Bailey, we used to go into the prisons a long time ago.
Yes.
We saw when the Society of Forgotten Actors at Pontiac Prison would put on plays, and we would bring young people in there. And the inmates would talk to the young people as if they were their family members.
Yes.
They would tell them what happened to the family since I've been in this joint. And then they would begin to talk about how do you go back from this place, this visit to a prison, and go back to a school or a church that has your best interest at heart. And I want to push that envelope. The inmate had 3 shots at the children: letter, phone call, and a visit. But they were powerful. These individuals had charge of cameras. I'm inmates, putting on plays, trying to discourage people from coming back to the prison. So prevention, we were talking to the children, we take them in there and say, we just want to be a part of a strategy that keeps you out of this system. And the church is helping us, or the school is helping us. Secondly, we want to be a part of a strategy that said, once you come back here, be a part of a family reconstruction. Don't just ask people to help me, Lord, I've been locked up. What are you doing to make your own family and community safe? You should be accountable too. And then thirdly, we have to talk about whether or not God is in this equation to the extent that our family values suggest, again, that old people are sacred, the women are sacred, and the children belong to all of us. You with me? So with a philosophical switch, we can begin to talk about strategical switches. But until we first decide that not Black Lives Matter, the brother in the joint said, Howard, he said, when I came in here, he said it was fists raised out there. He said cats were going to jail as Panthers and whatnot, just trying to make the community safe. What happened? We got to convince America that Black Lives Matter? What about black families? So I'm saying the onus is on us. It's on us. We got to...
Will your organization help in teaching African Americans
I'm doing what we can do
restore
now
the value
because,
of family?
well, when you say my organization, I'm a part of a ubiquitous group of people that are part of a national effort that are putting their feet on the ground, have been for 50 years. What gets redundant is keep telling people did you learn from the last episode? Right. Did we not learn anything about the Panthers? Have we not learned anything about the drug trafficking that was spoke of and the guns running rampant in the community? And we're finding out that there's corruption involved. There's racism involved. There's nepotism involved. There's excessive abuse of power involved. That's a cancer. So my organization wants to talk about the cancer. I'm not trying. Do you realize what you're asking me? Are we willing to? It's only one of me. And I'm here talking to whoever's watching or listening, tweeting or whatever we're doing these days. The word is coming out to you. Organize around the word. Don't be waiting for somebody to come and rescue us. There is no rescue mission in progress right here. When you talk about people who will torture you, like birds did, like we're doing with waterboarding, when people like that are in charge, you better be thinking about, is there really a strategy? And if there is a strategy, is God in it? And if God is in it, how do I be obedient to that?
Now, back to the black violence.
That's okay, it's your show.
I want to talk about that because our children are killing each other big time. Every single day you pick up the paper and there's a new body count. How do you feel about that? And why is this happening to us now?
If I were to ask you, is this the first time you've seen this?
No.
Well, then what you talking about?
I mean, it's every day.
Well, it's going to continue. Nobody's putting a stop to it. Is there a strategy? Have we heard the superintendent of police addressing the candidates for mayor, the candidates for automatic seats, the candidates for the House of Representatives and the Senate at the state or the federal level? Have we heard the police trying to tell you how to solve this problem? They know more about it than you do. When are you going to start asking them, rather than glorifying event by event, why don't we ask the superintendent, what's his strategy? What is the strategy of his cabinet? And then put it in perspective. Because again, you're in high places now. Think about it. The police came over to the South Side and murdered a baby in front of the world. A court system decided that it was not as egregious as it looked. And they got technical with the law.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
All right. And you wonder why our children, I read old articles in the newspaper that show how long a guy can walk around shooting people in the black community and keep getting a judge to give him some slack because he got a lawyer, got some money. That's called organized crime. And we're witnessing the effects of something. We keep getting hung up on the emotional side of the effects of a systemic problem that's been going on since you were a teenager. I know it has since I was. I was born in Chicago. Yes. You want me to tell you about gangs when I was a kid? Because you got some guys rotting in prison right now that went to jail as teenagers, supposedly for shooting somebody in the street, but it wasn't no policeman, and certainly wasn't no white one. But anyway, there are
But I still-
solutions. What are you asking me though? You asking me to regurgitate something that we both witnessing. Why is it going on? It's going on because nobody has put a stop to it. Are you asking me to give you a strategy for stopping it? Then let's
No,
talk about another program.
I'm talking about values, like Tyshawn Lee, that 9-year-old boy who was assassinated by a black man. I mean, where are the values?
What's the definition of
mayor
assassination?
the mayor says that we have
Quentin.
lost our values.
Chinta, I have so much respect for you because you're doing what needs to be done. And you don't mind digging in. And you and I go back a ways. We do go back a ways.
Yep.
You were at a gang summit that I was at in Jamaica
Oh, I remember
years
that.
ago.
Yep.
And there were strategies being discussed then. Some of the people that were involved in being a part of that strategy are deceased.
Yes.
Some got compromised in the process. And some are still trying.
I'm telling you.
But if you have a community that needs to be a part of a discussion, and that's a show you ought to have, let Reverend Sinclair and Reverend Bailey and a few of the people, including yourself, that went to that island and came back with some marching orders.
Yes.
We were talking about not ever letting people confuse us about how does the police connect to the court system, connect to the prison system, and recidivism becomes the value of our lives when they're the ones who decide what the value is. We just need to go back and see, have we done anything right? And if so, what was the value of that? And if so, let's do some more.
It was back when you were in the African American Police League. And by the way, do they still exist?
They went by the wayside because the Fraternal Order of Police came into existence in 1979 on James Burns' watch. And they became the sole bargaining agent for all police officers. So black police said, well, why would I pay y'all some dues and this big thing over here called the union gonna take care of me? Well, many years later, they found out the Fraternal Order of Police was not for you.
That's right.
It was for the police. And they didn't consider you the real police, especially if you challenged them as a member of the Afro-American Patrolmen's League. So it didn't die. The spirit is alive. I'm alive.
You
I'm sitting there
certainly are.
looking at it, and there's a whole bunch of me out there. But begin to look at where Harold Washington was being impactful with black mayors, starting with Gary and Hatcher, and the black mayors that were beginning to look at urban America out of a different lens. They were deciding that the power of voting is real. We don't have time to. So sound bites for your questions is difficult for me.
That's all right, because we have run out of time. You've been listening to the Strausberg Report. I'm Chinta Strausberg. My very special guest has been Howard Saffold, former director of Mayor Washington's security. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Keep up the good work, sister.
Thank you.